Hey, it's Ken Pecoraro here with another volume of CPC Speaks podcast. Today we got a great guest. It's Tracy. She's one of the directors here at CPC, and she's actually the division director of our community programs. And one of her specialties is trauma. You know, for me, I always considered myself an addiction person. That's where my training has been, and I've worked a lot with trauma myself. But you know, the field has moved so much towards being more sensitive to trauma, and we all know how much trauma is involved in the addiction world. But I'm so eager to hear what you have, Katie, about to learn more. So, one question, you want to introduce yourself? Go ahead.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tracy. Happy to be here with Ken to talk a little bit today about trauma and trauma sensitivity and kind of why we're in a place in current time where everyone's talking so much about trauma and the importance of trauma sensitivity. And I think it's because a lot of the research has kind of caught up. And so we all know there's an innovation gap in behavioral health and addictions where we're a little bit behind in research, about 10 to 15 years. So I think, everyone's become a lot more aware of the research on trauma and the importance of addressing it and being very sensitive to it.
Yeah, that's no doubt about it. I feel the same way. So tell me about this ACEs thing. Other than a deck of cards, you hear ACEs all the time. So why don't we start with that? Let's, and for me, the audience, let's talk briefly about what's your thoughts on ACEs?
Right. Well, I think it's interesting you said deck of cards because I usually say, 4 aces is a really good hand to have in a game of poker, right?
Wow, and that wasn't planned. I didn't even realize that. Okay.
So I'm a blackjack player, so I don't know. But I know in a game of poker, it's a pretty good hand. But when dealt in childhood, it's not so great of a hand. So the ACE study was the largest study done on childhood adversity. It was done by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC. And in short, what they found was they looked at certain adverse childhood experiences, and then they looked at the relationship between those adverse childhood experiences to social and health outcomes. And what they found was significant dose relationship to adverse childhood experiences and specific social and health outcomes. So I thought...
So what do you mean by dose relationship?
Meaning that the more the ACEs, the higher the risk for future negative social and health outcomes.
Gotcha.
Yes. So I thought we could play a bit of a game of true-false to engage you in some of those dose relationships between adverse childhood experiences and social and health outcomes. You up for it?
I guess. All right. You're going to put me on the spot here? All right. So
a little bit.
Just the audience know, I don't know the questions ahead of time, so... I hope I get them right. I got a 50-50 chance here. All right.
That's right.
Let's go.
All right. You're going to do great. Okay. So first is higher ACE scores can affect a person's chance of being diagnosed with cancer. True or false?
Wow. I'm going to say true on that one because it makes sense that the more dysfunction in someone's life, the more... I would imagine health somehow is going to get involved in that, which would, I don't know, that's my reasoning on it. I'm going to go.
And you are absolutely right.
All right.
That is true. Okay. And we're going to get into some of the reasons why a little bit later. But, okay. More likely with adverse childhood experiences to experience depression.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. That's almost a no-brainer. That's absolutely true. All right, next one. 4 or more adverse childhood experiences can affect whether you prefer American versus European beer.
Huh. False?
That one is false. You got me.
Oh, man, okay. That would have been odd.
Okay. More than twice as likely to develop lung disease.
Well, it makes sense if we're staying with the health thing, then that would be true as well.
Yes, that is true. Okay. 12 times more likely to attempt suicide.
I'm going to go yes.
That is true. More than 3 times likely to be favored by mosquitoes.
Can mosquitoes sense childhood adverse experiences, I'm going to say false.
That is false.
Okay.
But I will tell you, I asked this.
That would be one insightful mosquito.
Yes, it would be. Although I asked this question once in a training where there were a few nurses in the room, and they really questioned it because they thought, well, it does lead to certain medical conditions, which could then lead to certain scents that a person emits, and the mosquito might be more inclined to go for those scents, and they were really reading into it.
Okay.
I feel they might need to research it a bit more. It might be true, but as of right now, it's not.
As of right now, okay.
Yeah. All right. 6 or more categories of ACEs shortens the lifespan by 20 years.
Oh, I'm going to go true with that one.
That is true, yes. Girls are 50% more likely to have experienced 5 or more categories of ACEs.
That would make, yes, I'm going to say true.
True. Yeah. What do you think the reason is for that?
I think with abuse, sexual abuse particularly, girls are more victimized.
Yes, that's true. I also sort of question sometimes because usually with abuse it's self-reported. So, and we do know that males underreport sometimes.
Right. So
sometimes that's skewed, but at least with the data we have, that's what it shows.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Mental health workers have a higher ACE score on average compared to retail managers.
Oh yeah, mental health workers. Yeah, I mean, this field attracts people who've had some baggage of their own, so I'm gonna say yes, true.
Absolutely. We all come into this field for a reason, whether we're aware of it or not, right? So it's absolutely true. Okay, 4 more ACEs equals a 200% increase in risk for becoming a sapiophile.
Well, that would help if I knew what a sapiophile is. Are you going to explain that?
So my name's Katie, and I'm a sapiophile.
Okay.
Okay, a sapiophile is someone who is attracted to intelligence. Are you a sapiophile, Ken?
Sure.
Okay.
I guess.
That threw you off.
I never thought that much about it, but yeah. But back to the original true false. I'm gonna say false on that one.
That's a false.
Oh, I got it right.
You got it right. Although I think they might need to research that too.
There you go. That and mosquitoes.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. 4 or more ACEs equals a 500% increase in risk for adult alcohol use disorder.
True.
Absolutely true. 500% increase for risk.
Wow.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah. Outrageous.
Men with 6 or more ACEs equals 4,600% increase in risk for IV drug use.
Yeah, it's a very specific number, so I'm sure that's a researched thing.
It's true.
Yes, true.
Yeah,
okay.
but like incredible, right? That's the increase in risk. 78% of IV drug use in women can be attributed to ACEs.
Yes, true.
That's absolutely true. Yes. 4 or more ACEs is you're more likely to have an innie versus outie belly button.
False.
You are right. That is false. Okay. That wasn't too painful,
No,
was it?
no,
Okay.
no. Okay, hey, that's
All
pretty
right.
good.
There's also a relationship to about 40 plus more outcomes to date. Stroke, diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis, autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia,
Wow.
and so on. Yeah.
So it's very significant, clearly. These ACEs really have lasting effects on people's lives across a whole host of life areas, clearly.
Absolutely. Right. The social, right, behavioral health, addictions, it's really all kind of intermingled, and they have significant effects.
So what are some of the reasons why these ACEs have all these potentially negative effects?
Good question, and that's what everybody asks. And I think you you kind of made note of this earlier about the idea about these behaviors that might lead to future health outcomes, right? Which a lot of people do question, like, well, so you have ACEs, so then you might go on to sort of have these riskier health behaviors, right? Or negative health behaviors like smoking and using drugs and drinking and things like that. And while that is partially true, they haven't found that that's the only relationship to these health outcomes, because they have controlled for it and the health outcomes still kind of stand on their own at times. So how I like to explain it is picture a shower, right? So I use a shower metaphor. Imagine water.
Is it a sapiophile in the shower or no?
Well, I would hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So imagine a shower and imagine water, right, is the stress hormones,
Okay.
right, coming out. So look, stress itself is neither positive or negative, right? Context and dose matter. Like, is it controllable? Is it predictable? Right? And those factors are just as important as the intensity of the stress, right? And whether it will be a force for resilience or a force for harm, right? People's individual level of development and sensitivity to stress also matter, right? So just imagine how ACEs increase the probability of sensitizing people to stress activation. There's more unpredictability, there's less control, there's no moderation, right? So you're in the shower,
Gotcha.
right? A person with less ACEs or no ACEs at all, they can get into the shower, they can turn it on, they can adjust the temperature, right? Oh, I like it a little cooler, that's what I'm going to do today. It's a hot summer day. Oh, it's winter, I'm going to take a hotter shower today. And they can adjust it, and then they can turn it off when they want to, right?
Okay.
Now imagine a person with 4 or more, and I say 4 or more because that's really the number that they found
Right,
had
from the
these
study.
significant relationships, right? So a person with 4 or more, they get into the shower, well, the shower just starts spitting out at them, right? They don't have the opportunity to control the temperature, to turn it off when they want to turn it back on when they want to. So these chronic unpredictable stress floods their brain and body with inflammatory hormones and chemicals, which changes the stress response system, right? So we all have the stress response system. It's our fight or flight, right? We walk
Right.
into a forest, we see a bear, right? Everybody has their own kind of unique response
Right.
to it, right? We fight,
We
we run,
Right.
or we freeze, right?
Gotcha.
So we do one of those 3, but once the bear is gone and we're out of danger, the stress response system turns off, right? We no longer need that, right?
Right.
So from an evolutionary perspective, it served a good purpose for us, right, to have this stress response system. But now imagine that bear is in your living room every single day. What happens is your stress response system never learns how to turn off, right? It
right.
doesn't have an off switch. So those stress hormones, right, continue to just flood the person's body, which causes inflammation. And the inflammation is actually what's connected to a lot of these future health outcomes.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. That's a good
So,
illustration.
yeah, children's developing brains and bodies are especially vulnerable. Why? Because children's brains aren't fully developed, right? So they go through sort of the initial stage from, birth to age 3. 90% of brain is developed by age 3, but then it continues to grow. So what ends up happening is they cannot ever go with children with ACEs and what we might say complex trauma, right? It's just ongoing, unpredictable, chronic stress, right? Their stress response system never learns to turn off, and their brain actually, it changes the architecture of their brain. So their brain never develops as it would have because they can never be in a learning brain. When you feel safe and secure, you can be curious as a kid, and you
Right.
can explore, and you can, explore different things and learn that way. Well, kids with chronic stress are in a survival brain
Right. There's
all
a bear in
the
the living
time.
room. You're going to be less inclined to want to go out and explore.
Exactly. So, in short, these hormones and chemicals maintain people in a chronic state of alertness, right? The stress response doesn't turn off, and ultimately it changes brain structure.
And that really explains the long-term effects of how it goes into adulthood and really the rest of someone's life.
Absolutely.
That's a great. I see. I love a good illustration. You provided 2 good ones there, so that really puts in perspective. So to just kind of wrap it up on something. So where are we moving in terms of a field? Briefly, just how, what are we doing? So we know this. What do we do with it? We know about these ACEs. We want to help people to cope and to readjust, and I guess have their brain,
Right.
adjusted, or I don't know if adjusted is the wrong word. It more sounds like a chiropractor, but give people the help they need so that they can cope better and move forward in spite of the having these experiences. So what how do we go from there?
So that's a great question. And I think, the good news is that, we've now know from neuroscience that the brain there's neuroplasticity to the brain. So the brain can change. Some parts easier than others, right? But for the most part, this doesn't have to be people's destiny, right? So I think the importance of screening and assessing for ACEs, right? Understanding the relationships between ACEs and the future social and health outcomes, the significant relationships with behavioral health disorders, addiction, and physical health disorders, right? So, and not seeing all of these fields as kind of mutually exclusive, right? They really are all interrelated, right? And integrating all of that. So, and understanding that a lot of this will continue unless we look to resolve some of these ACEs that people have had. I also think that we may, in the future, as a field, look to really explore some more non-traditional forms of therapy, which have been shown to really help kind of with, like the neuroplasticity of the brain and kind of changing those neural pathways back. So, something for us to consider.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is a super interesting topic, and I just, even in this little time, I feel like you've expanded my view on it as well. So, I feel like we got a part 2 in sight down the road for this one. This is a good one.
I would love it.
So, definitely something, something to think about as far as getting training if you're working in the field and learning about ACEs and the treatment and getting the proper training. So, Katie, that was excellent. So, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right. Take care, everybody.